181 CEOs in the Business Roundtable, which is an association comprising of chief executives of some of the biggest corporations in the United States, have signed a commitment to lead their companies for the benefit of all stakeholders, not just shareholders. Those stakeholders include customers, employees, suppliers, communities, as well as shareholders. Now, this is a change from the official position that they've held for 47 years. And I had a chance to talk with Andrea Barrack. She is Global Head of Sustainability and Corporate Citizenship at TD Bank Group, and I asked her what prompted this change.
Yeah, so I think corporations look at, as part of their mandate and what they do in organizations, they have employees, they have customers, they have the broader public, they have the communities in which they operate, and then they have their shareholders, right, who are kind of a customer in a way. And so the difference that this roundtable, I think, got to is to say, previously, only the shareholder counted. So as long as we were making money for the shareholder, that was all we needed. And now saying, if we want to actually look to the future and be sustainable over the longer term, we have to make sure our employees are taken care of. We have to make sure our customers are treated well and fairly. We have to consider things that are good for the public and the communities in which we operate. And so I think that's been the big shift. It's a shift in the US, but it's actually not a shift in Canada because previously the Supreme Court already ruled that, in fact, corporations have a duty to all of the stakeholders of the corporation, not just the shareholders. And so while this is new news in the US, it's not new news for Canada.
Yeah, tick for Canada. That's a good thing to hear.
Always.
How significant is that? I mean, because, it sounds like, you've changed a word, but, how is that going to really change outcomes in terms of, you think, how corporations are acting?
Well, a bit TBD, to be honest. There has been some skepticism with the announcement that came out. I think there's a lot of hope about what this will mean. But people wondered, is this a publicity stunt? Is it because, in fact, consumers are getting a little bit more savvy and have higher expectations of corporations and what they should be doing to have a positive influence on the world and putting pressure that way? So they came up with a statement. The devil will be in what actions are taken. Right? So are companies actually changing their behavior to then actually sort of put some oomph behind those words?
Well, let's talk about some of the oomph that you've been putting behind some words. And this isn't because of what's just happened. You've been doing this for a while. You're the head of Global Head Sustainability and Corporate Citizenship at TD Bank Group. You've put in place something called the Ready Commitment. Tell me just what was the genesis of that?
Yeah, so TD always said their purpose was to enrich the lives of their customers, their colleagues, and their communities. And I think for us, we wanted to explore, well, what does that mean? And how might we do that, given the business that we're in, given the geography that we operate under? And so we actually undertook some research, both internally and externally. And we wanted to know, what are the issues that are most important to the people who work for us, for our customers that we have, and in the communities that we operate? And what we found is that there was this growing sense of trepidation and worry about the future. That we have, huge demographic shifts, increasing urbanization, automation, and technological advances that, quite frankly, we're starting to make people feel like they might be left behind. And if they weren't worried about themselves being left behind, they might be worried about their kids. Yeah. And so this sort of, how do we then, as a bank, help people to get to where they need to go? And so the Ready Commitment was really about, can we have a role, working with others, of course, because we can't do it alone, but to help open those doors for a more inclusive tomorrow.
I know the bank came out as well with some stats. To your point, I was going to highlight it because only a third of North Americans feel confident about the future, and 50% of Canadians and 2/3 of Americans would have a hard time finding a job in the new digital kind of. That is disconcerting, I think, for people.
It is disconcerting for sure. And if we look at politics both in the U.S. and Canada, a lot of that is, what does the future of work look like?
Yeah.
How do we ensure that we have a stable and steady middle class that actually can contribute to the world and to the economy? So that was certainly part of the genesis of what we wanted to try to achieve is how do we make that happen?
Okay, so what's in the Ready Commitment? You have 4 pillars. Let's take us through each one, if you would, just in terms of what it is, why, and what you hope to see from it.
Sure, and we actually use a little bit different language. We talk about these interconnected drivers of change. And why that's different is because pillars indicate silos, things that happen separately. And what we recognized is that if we want to create that more inclusive and sustainable tomorrow, we actually need to invest in things and do things that actually will work together to do that and actually will catalyze. So financial security obviously is a big one. we're a bank, right?
Yeah.
And so that's an area where we should be playing. But we take both a long-term view and a sort of a more immediate view as well. So we've always been heavy into financial education and financial literacy. We're going to continue to do that. We're going to also invest in helping that future of work that we talked about, whether it be through entrepreneurship or jobs of tomorrow. But then our longer-term view is looking at how do we actually increase access to affordable housing, particularly in some of our cities that we know it's becoming increasingly unaffordable. And then how do we make sure the next generation actually can be financially secure? And so we're investing in things like making sure literacy and numeracy of kids kindergarten to grade 6 is where it needs to be.
It's interesting too, because you are putting your money where your mouth is. I think I saw there was 10 $1 million grants to nonprofits to help them figure out ways. Again, this is not you figuring it out, but helping fund others figure out how to do that.
Absolutely, because we can be a catalyst and a partner in sort of doing this. And so actually the annual TD Ready Challenge is all about that. How do we seed innovation in some of the problems that we've identified in the Ready Commitment?
Let me ask you about the second, what is it? Interconnected driver?
Drivers of change.
Thank you.
Yes.
Interconnected drivers of change. Okay. Vibrant planet. Again, I think this one has taken on a new tone, I'd say recently, in terms of just the immediacy that people are feeling like something needs to be done. Tell me about this one.
Yeah, so if we do think about that inclusive tomorrow, it's also a sustainable tomorrow, right? And we know that people are worried about the future of the planet. We can see actually in our everyday lives how this is impacting us, whether it be forest fires or flooding or hurricanes that are happening and becoming more severe over time. And what we don't recognize often is that people who have less means actually are disproportionately affected by that, right? And so people don't think about inclusion being part of environmental issues, but they really are. And so we want to do really two things. One is help the economy transition to low carbon. And so we're in Canada. We have rich energy sources, but a lot of the companies that we're working with actually are putting a lot of investment into innovative ideas for the economy of the future, which will be low carbon. The other thing that we're investing in is green space and urban green space, because we recognize not only does more trees help to capture carbon, which is really important, but that green space is that place in communities where people can go and connect with one another too. So that's where it's sort of that interconnected. It's both about community, but it is about what's right for the environment.
Interesting. And you've also, I know, TD Securities recently, just to get very tactical for a second, just recently.
Our turn.
Was a big investor in that as well. Well, now, what is that?
So they are a clean tech sort of fund that was looking at how do we actually invest dollars into making sure that we are able to then rely not so much on traditional energy, but in terms of clean energy. And so in 2017, TD made a commitment to try to target $100 billion in investment and financing and asset management towards this low carbon economy. So far, we're actually, in the first 2 years, we were at about 30, and so that's pretty good. And investments like ArcTurn will actually help us to get there.
Last two drivers of change: connected communities and better health. So again, these make so much sense when you hear them. But I mean, obviously, health. If you're not healthy, you can't worry about everything else. And the connected communities as well. Is that just a more digital literacy? Well,
there's a couple things. I mean, one, we have better health is really recognizing that people who have financial issues actually tend to also have health issues, right? So the better off you are, the better your health tends to be. You can purchase better food, you might have more time to exercise, your stress levels might be a little bit better. But conversely, and this is a North American view, is that access to healthcare isn't there for everyone. So what are the things that we can do to try to seed, again, those innovative solutions that will help to try to bring access to more people, whether it's about screening and prevention through increased technology, or using AI research to figure out, what are the different markers for disease that they can be caught early and therefore sort of dealt with more immediately. So that's sort of the better health piece of it, recognizing that as a big contributor to financial confidence. And then connected communities. We did research that showed that 1/3 of North Americans feel like they're not connected to their communities. And we know this has huge implications in terms of the link between social isolation and health status, but also social isolation and financial status. And so there was some research that came out of Stanford that showed that there was a direct correlation between the number of people in your social network and your net worth. And so if people are increasingly sort of living alone, maybe not connecting as much with their community, that actually does have an impact on those other things. And so we want to make sure that we're helping to drive a sense of belonging in the communities in which we operate.
Andrea, thanks very much.
Thanks so much.